And you need to be able to appreciate the situation and its consequences. As I was saying, what happens if I decide to go with this treatment, this treatment, this treatment, or no treatment? And you also need to have the ability to reason rationally. I didn't get a sense from that previous video that that subject had any of these things. So I think, in this case, we can argue about it. So if they can't consent, what would that mean legally, though?
Right, so that video would presumably be experimenting without the subject's consent. And again, we were talking about zombies which are alive, they're suffering from a mental disorder, and the rights of the mentally ill have been a hot subject in the legal community for most of the last century. It's now very, very difficult to involuntarily commit someone for mental illness. It's very difficult to get a guardian appointed without their consent. The courts strongly protect the rights of the mentally ill, and zombies in this setting would count. So if they're alive, they're going to have all the rights they had before, and you're not really allowed to mess around with it. If you do during the apocalypse, you can be called to account for it afterwards. If they're dead, though, it's probably more or less open season.
Speaking of open season,
yeah, Burt Reynolds. Tell him to get Burt Reynolds.
If we're considering zombies to be alive in this particular scenario, then obviously that's going to be murder, first degree, typically. But even if the zombies are dead, that kind of thing is going to be, probably abuse of the corpse. Those zombies are not threatening anybody. That's not self-defense. That's not defense of others. Sniper shooting for fun could even run afoul of local firearms laws, hunting laws. You're shooting, you're firing, discharging a weapon in the city. That kind of thing. Unless, perhaps, if zombies were legally classified as a pest species, which may be in the apocalypse scenario. Some other examples would be things like pitting zombies against each other, zombie fighting kind of things, or people fighting zombies for farm sport. Again, it varies from state to state. Some states have really broad use of the corpse laws, like Texas does, for example. And other states, it's actually pretty narrow. Like Florida's is pretty narrow.
Alright, so we've talked about stages 1, 2, and 3. And throughout these stages, a lot of these stages have involved death. So, now that we're stage 4, it's time to talk about taxes. If a rich person's turned into a zombie, especially if they're going to be considered dead in most scenarios, their assets are going to be distributed to their heirs. The IRS is going to say, maybe you should pay a state tax on that stuff. The problem is while the states have their laws about how to determine whether or not someone is dead, as Cody was talking about with the Termination of Death Act, different laws can often have conflicting rules or different rules for how to determine something. And the federal tax laws are kind of unclear as to how exactly death is defined. A professor at Arizona State University, Adam Charles, wrote a really fascinating article, Death, Taxes, and Zombies. And he argued that, the tax laws are inadequate. The zombie apocalypse is coming, and this is going to be a serious issue, and we need to reform the laws now so that we don't have this huge problem on our hands later. And he also talks about vampires and ghosts, and it is a fantastic read, and the whole thing is available for free online, so if you get a chance to search for it, and it's really approachable, and it's really fun. Alright, well, we've all heard of Modern Family, but how about this Modern Family? So talking about zombies and family law, Ryan.
Again, if zombies are dead, it's not really an issue. When people die, family law is pretty ambiguous about what happens next. What if they're still alive, though? If a parent becomes a zombie and is still alive, we're going to terminate their parental rights. Where's the kid going to go?
Well, I can comment on that, actually.
Sure, go ahead.
what we do in the state of California and in most states, I would say all 50, is we want to ensure that children are adequately provided for by their parents or by their guardians. If they're not, in steps Child Protective Services, CPS, or DCFS, the Department of Child and Family Services. I don't know how many calls they've gotten because parents have turned into zombies, but they would come out, make sure everything's okay with the child. If it's not, and presumably a parent as a zombie would be a problem, they would remove the child temporarily if there's a cure to allow the parent to get better. And the child in the meantime would stay with someone, say next of kin, or have to go to foster care. But if there's no cure, then that's different, and DCFS would continue to follow the child, and the child will get placed.
As far as zombie children go, here we actually get back into state powers about quarantining and preventing infectious disease. Doesn't matter if the parents want to hang on to the child, if the health officers deem that this child will be a danger to public health, they're going to take the child away, and that's the end of it.
Okay.
So, yeah, you know, dog bites. What about liability for zombie bites? So parents have a zombie child. The child bites them. So liability for that. Well, think about dog bites or injuries from other animals. Probably be analogized to that. Most states have what's called the one free bite rule, where domestic animals are considered to be safe, and there's no liability unless you have reason to know that they were dangerous, usually because they've bitten somebody before. Things are different with wild animals like lions and tigers. You guys hear about that sort of private exotic zoo in Ohio where they have all the tigers and stuff? Yeah, those are exotic animals. If they hurt someone, you're liable. That's the end of it. Zombies would probably be considered something like that. And this also goes towards something like, you know, using zombie as security measures to keep people out of stuff. There was the child in the Night of the Living Dead, same sort of situation. You're keeping control of the zombie, you presume that the zombie is dangerous, zombie hurts someone, you're in trouble.
Alright, so you've gotten a taste of some hypothetical legal scenarios. Let's give you a bigger taste of something now with a mock trial. So we're going to do a couple things here. Now, we're each going to take a role in a mock trial of a defendant. You will hear the facts of the case. I will be the judge, as I said. Dr. Kambam will be the expert witness for the defense counsel will be Mr. Daly. We have Mr. Davidson as the prosecutor. The expert witness for the prosecution is Dr. Posios. Now, again, this is a mock trial. We're going to assume some things have already been done, such as swearing in all 200 jurors today. You will be the jury. And we're also going to, again, assume that you have heard and understood, or we have heard and understood the testimony of other people, such as you might hear in reference to bartender's testimony. We're going to assume that neither the prosecution nor the defense contest those issues. They've agreed that it's admissible, and they're agreeable on hearing it.
All right, can we turn the house lights up now, please?
No.
Anyone? Anybody manning the room?
Okay, well, you guys, can you see us okay?
Yeah.
All right. Oh, great, thank you. Okay, so let's begin the mock trial. We're just going to rearrange up here, and we'll go from there. Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I'd like to start with the case history. Okay. Danny defendant was charged with killing Victor victim. Danny is pleading not guilty by reason of insanity. Claims that he was a zombie at the time of the killing. Danny killed Victor between 1 o'clock in the morning and 3:15 in the morning. Cause of death was hypovolemic shock, severe blood loss. Danny was infected with zombie virus at the time of the crime, but now recovered after treatment with antivirals. What was the cause? Well, the police found this in his garage. So now, Mr. Davidson, opening remarks?
Sure. The purpose of the trial at this point, again, he's been charged with a homicide offense. He does not contest committing the killing. What we're doing now is deciding whether or not you, the jury, are going to believe his plea of not guilty by reason of insanity.
And actually, Mr. Davidson, allow me as the judge to explain this, please. Fair enough. So, again, Danny's been charged with this homicide offense. He does not contest committing the acts. He is stating that he's committed the acts. However, your task is to evaluate whether he is not guilty by reason of insanity. Now, criminal responsibility is another way to refer to not guilty by reason of insanity. It's sometimes called NGRI, or criminally insane. It's a legal term. It's saying that I was insane at the time of the crime, so I should be legally responsible. As an aside, insanity is a legal term. It is not a term that a physician would diagnose someone with. It's not a medical or psychiatric term. In California, as each state will have its own interpretation, in California, at the time of the offense, you can understand whether someone was not guilty by reason of insanity based on this. At the time of the offense, the mental disease or defect rendered the defendant incapable of knowing, either knowing or understanding, one, the nature and quality of his or her act, or, so again, knowing or understanding the nature and quality of his or her act, or distinguishing right from wrong. Now, not guilty by reason of insanity, let's understand each of those prongs. The nature of the act is what actually happened. There are terms here. Understand that nature. Say, for example, a person who has cut off his wife's head with a knife but believed he was cutting a loaf of bread does not understand the nature of his act. Quality. Quality has to do with the logical consequences of an act. A person who fires a gun at someone, knowing it's a gun, but under the genuine belief that guns are incapable of producing any injury, does not understand the quality of his act. Wrongfulness. Wrongfulness is a bit more straightforward. A defendant who shoots a victim, knowing that the victim will die, but who simply cannot understand why anyone would be upset, or why anyone would have a problem with this, or that such actions are illegal, does not understand the wrongfulness of his acts. So now, Mr. Davidson, I turn it over to you for your opening arguments.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're being asked to decide whether the defendant, whom we know killed the victim, ought to be held responsible for his crime. Danny would have you excuse his guilt by finding that he